Hi everyone, I'm Nathaniel Hope, and I'm making this video to help you understand how to find the domain and range of a graph by looking at it. And before we get started, let's keep in mind the difference between a relation and a function. A relation is the relationship between the x and y values of ordered pairs, and we can have the same x value for different y values. Functions are a type of relation, but relations aren't always functions because functions can only have exactly one x for every y. So, as we figure out the domain and range and other information, let's just keep that in mind. So, let's get started with the domain for A. I'm going to write the domain on top for all of these problems, just so we can keep it organized. So to start, we know that the domain is on the x-axis because it includes all x values, or all x values that are included on the graph. So we figure out the domain by looking at the graph from left to right. So I'll start at the origin, and I'll figure out the farthest left value, and I'll go to the right, and I'll figure out the domain that way. So 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. So our leftmost value, x value on this graph is -6, and for the rightmost value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our domain is from -6 to 6. And we write this like this. -6 first is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 6. So we put the left part right here in the beginning and the right part at the end. Also notice that I put less than or equal to. I put that because the circles are closed. If they were open like they are in B, then I would just put less than. And we'll get to that right now, after we finish this problem. So we still need to find the range. There we go. So to find the range, we go from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to start at the origin and work my way up to the highest point on this graph. Before I do it though, don't get confused and think that we have 3 as our starting value for the range, because the range is for all y values and it goes from the bottom to the top. So this 3 is on the x-axis. It's not on the y-axis. So if we look on our graph, we start at 0. That means the lowest point on this graph is 0. So we'll keep that in mind. We'll go ahead and write that down. And let's work our way up. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6, y equals 6 is the highest point on this graph. So we write this it's almost the same as how we write the domains. In fact, it's exactly the same, but we have different numbers and y instead of x. So 0, our bottom, is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 6. Okay, let's do a different color. So let's look at B. We want to find the domain first, so I'll put that on top. Okay, so we'll start at the origin. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. That's our leftmost x value on the graph. Then we're going to go back to the origin to find the rightmost point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So remember what I said earlier about the open circle. It's not going to have the line under the less than sign because the open means it's not included. The way I think of it is open, out. So we'll have -7 is less than or equal to x is less than 5. And before I find the range, I want to go back to a. How do we figure out if it's a function or not? It's actually not, it's quite simple. We do the vertical line test. And basically, a vertical line goes up and down like this. And we're going to see if our line that we draw on the graph, if it touches the graph at more than one point. If it does, then it's not a function. So, if we do this on A, we realize that it does not touch it more than once, so it is a function. I'll just put a check mark there. So let's find the range, and then we'll figure out if B is a function. So both of these things for B. So range. So we'll start at our origin. So -1, -2, -3. And then let's start at our origin again to find our highest point on the graph, 1. So the part about having an open circle and having less than instead of less than or equal to still applies for the range. So we'll have -3. I'll write that a bit neater. -3 is less than or equal to y is less than 1. So we see with the vertical line test, it is indeed a function because the lines that we drew only touched the graph at one point. So C is a bit different for a few reasons. First off, we have two open circles. So that means that both of our signs will not have a line under them. Okay? So to find our x first, to find our domain, we have to start at our origin. So 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So we see that this graph does not have a value for, say, 1 or 2 or -3. It's only at -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So in this case, we say that the domain is x equals -5. Let's find the range. So we'll start at the origin, go down to the lowest point, -1, -2, and we'll go to the highest point, starting at the origin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So remember our open circles. We aren't including these points, which means that we're not putting a line under it, because a line means that it's equal to. And since it's open, it's out, it's not included. It's not equal to these points. So we go from -2 is less than y is less than 6. And finally, our vertical line test reveals that it does touch at more than one point. It touches right here at this point, right here. So at multiple points. So this is not a function. So let's scroll down a bit. All right. So I'm going to find the domain for this one. I'm going to see where x starts from the left and where it ends, starting at the origin. So -1, -2, -3, -4. -4, and then to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll put -4 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 4. Now for the range, I'm going to find the lowest point starting at the origin, -1, -2, -3, -4. And since it's a circle, I know it's going to be 4, but I'll still show it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So -4 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 4. And I can write that a bit neater. -4 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 4. So let's figure out if it's a function or not. So if this graph fails the vertical line test because it touches here at this point and at this point. So it's not a function. Here, we have to find the domain first. So starting at the origin, we see something kind of interesting. So we do start at 0, but these arrows show that it goes on, this graph goes on forever. So we don't have any point on this graph for -1 or anything below 0. So we must show that in the domain by saying that there are no x values below 0 included in this graph. So to do that, we say x is greater than or equal to 0. It's equal to 0 at this point, which is 0, 0. The range is a little interesting. So like I said earlier, these arrows mean that the graph goes on forever. So that means it's going to touch all of the range values. So there's even way at some x value, y equals 5,000, 5 million, and beyond. So it truly goes on forever. So to show that, we say that the range is all real numbers. We can do an R just like this. So if we do the vertical line test, we see that it fails, so it's not a function. All right. So take a second to try F on your own, pause the video, see what you get, and I'll give you a few seconds and we'll do it together. Okay, so F, we have to find the domain first. And we start at our origin. We see that it starts at 0. This graph starts at 0. So let's go ahead and write that down, 0. We see it's an open circle, so it's not included. Open out, less than. We already know it's going to be x because we're doing the domain. Well, let me not put that other less than yet. So we see that this arrow means that this graph goes on forever, right? It keeps going on, at not including 0, but any point beyond 0, right? And for the x's. So to show that, we have to put that x is greater than 0. And we've already done that. We can either write 0 is less than x, or we can switch it around and say x is greater than 0. These two equal, they mean the same thing, whichever you prefer, but we've already done that, so our job is done for the domain. Now the range, we start at the origin and we see that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, our graph stays at 4. So we simply put that, to show that, we simply say y equals 4 for our range. And the vertical line test shows that this is indeed a function. It only touches at one point for each line, so that is a function. Okay, so try these three on your own and see what you get, and we'll compare answers. All right. So for G, the domain, to find it, let's start at the origin. 0, -1, -2, -3. -3 is not included, so it's less than x. And then for our rightmost value, we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is less than or equal to 5 because it's a closed circle. It is included. Always remember, we read the domain from left to right, like a book. For the range, we see that it's stuck. It's stuck at -1, 0, -1. So y is simply equal to -1. This graph passes the vertical line test, so it is a function. For this one, the domain, we do 0, -1, -2, -3, -4. And in the right, for the rightmost point, we do 0, 1, 2. Both of these points are included, so we have a line under our sign. So we do -4 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 2. For our range, let's find our bottom value and then our top value. So our bottom value is 0, -1, -2. Is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Finally, for I. Oh, and before we move on, let's see if H passes the vertical line test. It does. For each vertical line, it only touches the graph at one point, so it does pass the vertical line test. For I, let's find the domain. So domain, 0, -1, -2, -3. Read the graph from left to right. So we have -3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So we have -3 is less than, it's not included, open out, less than x is less than 4. And for our range, we start from the bottom and work our way up. So 0, and our highest point, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0 to 5. 0 is included, is less than or equal to. Y is less than 5 because 5 is not included, open out. All right, so we have 3 more, so we're almost there. And once again, I forgot to do the vertical line test, so we do see that for each line we draw, it only touches the graph at one point, so it is indeed a function. So For J, here's the domain. Try it first and see what you get. The domain, 0, -1, -2, -3, is less than or equal to x, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is less than or equal to 4. We see that there are no open circles here, so they are included. -3 and 4 are included. For our range, start from the bottom and work our way up. 0, -1, -2. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So from -2 to 4, we have -2 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 4. There are no open circles here, so they are included. For our range for k, for our domain for k, and let me do that vertical line test for j first. So it fails the vertical line test, so it's not a function. Why? The lines we draw touch the graph at more than one point, here and here. So the domain for k, well, let's think about it a bit. We have arrows here, which means that it goes on forever, our graph does. And that means it's going to touch, this graph has a point at every possible x value. So that means that our domain is all real numbers. So that weird R symbol we drew earlier, we draw here. For our range, let's start at our origin 0. It starts here. Our range starts here at 0. But it also goes on forever. It touches every y value after 0, or including 0, but also every value after it. It doesn't include any value under 0, but every value including 0 and beyond. It are in the range. So that means that our y is greater than or equal to 0. And our vertical line test, it does pass because our lines only touch graph K at one point. So it is a function. Our last example, we're almost there. So for L, our domain, well, we have arrows in both directions. So our graph is going to touch every possible x value. And what does that give us? All real numbers. Now our range, is it any different? It's going to touch every possible x, every possible y value. Oops. All right, there we go. Every possible y value. So that means that our range is also all real numbers. Vertical line test, every line we draw only touches this graph at one point. So that means that L is a function. So to review, we have our domain and our range. Our domain deals with our x values, and our range deals with our y values. As we're doing problems like these, it's important to keep in mind the difference between a relation and a function. A relation is the relationship between our points, between our x and y values. And our relation can have more than one x, the same x for different y values. In contrast, our function can only have one x value for each y value. And we can find the function by looking at the picture of the graph by doing the vertical line test and seeing if our vertical line touches the graph more than once. If it does touch it more than once, then our graph fails the vertical line test and this graph is not a function. If it passes and only touches it once, as it does with L, then it is indeed a function. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, write them below, and I'll try to answer them if I can. Thank you for watching.